Said y'all wanted specifically to know about scholarships, and at the very end, I'm gonna just briefly go over the FAFSA has not really changed this year from last year. Just certain things that comes with marriage, as far as if parents were married in a state that recognizes same-sex marriage, even though they may be residing in a state now that does not, if the state that they were residing in when they got married recognizes it, then you would include both parents, and that's about the only thing. But for our scholarships, of course, we have our state scholarships. That's our Palmetto Fellows, our Life Scholarship, Hope Scholarship, and the enhancement if you're receiving these. The important thing is if anyone has Palmetto Fellows, anyone Palmetto Fellows? The key is we have to complete at least 30 hours each year. Are y'all entering freshmen?
I am.
So you have to have 30 hours between fall and spring term. You have to earn 30 hours and maintain the 3.0. If you don't maintain the 3.0, you can take, the only way you can get your GPA up is to take a class here over the summer. So what will happen is at the end of spring term, we're going to determine if you're a Palmetto Fellows recipient, whether between fall and spring terms, if you completed or earned 30 hours. And then we're going to check your GPA. If you're short hours, you can take those classes anywhere as long as they transfer back. But if you're short with GPA, the only way you can improve your GPA for Palmetto Fellows, or if you also have the Presidential Award, is to take a class at the College of Charleston. And the Presidential has the exact same renewal criteria system. And then, of course, the Life Scholarship, the important thing with the Life Scholarship is if you never had the Life Scholarship, you can get it after your first year. Or if you had it and lost it, you can get it back. So the Life Scholarship goes on a 30-hour each academic year, but it grows. For example, Palmetto Fellows and the Presidential, if you took 36 hours, 18 hours fall, 18 hours spring, that's a total of 36 hours. But when you start that next year, you start off at 0, you have to earn 30 hours again. The Life Scholarship is a little different. It's not 30 hours each academic year. You have to earn at least 30 hours each year. So after the first year for life, we're going to see if you've earned at least 30 hours. That'll count any classes you took in high school. It'll take any placement credit course you have, any IB courses, so any college credit course you have will count toward those hours. And if it's a college course that you received a grade for, that grade will also be used to determine your life GPA. So if you were to take 36 hours after your first year, the second year, I'm trying to see if you've earned 60. So you see, you would be ahead by those 6 hours and really have to take the 30 hours that year. But the important thing with the Life Scholarship is, let's say you didn't realize how brilliant you were until senior year of your high school. So you didn't have the requirement for the Life Scholarship, which is 2 of these 3 requirements: 3.0 GPA on the South Carolina Uniform Grading Scale, and 1100 on the SAT, just the math and the reading portion, and a super score. So if you took that test multiple times, they take the highest math and the highest reading. And or you had to have at least be in the upper 30%, 1100 or 24 on the SAT, ACT, and a 3.0 grade point average. So if you didn't meet any of those, after your first year, if you earn 30 hours and get a 3.0, you'll be eligible for the Life Scholarship going into your sophomore year. Let's say after that first year you had a 2.8 and you had the hours, but you still didn't have that GPA. The next year, if you have 60 hours and a 3.0, you'd be eligible for the Life Scholarship going into your junior year. And the same thing, your junior year, if you didn't have it or if you lost it at the end of that junior year, if you have 90 hours in a 3.0, then you can get that Life Scholarship back. It starts from initial college enrollment, so once you start attending college as a regular student, your clock starts, and it's 4 years from there on. It does not stop. So the key is, if for some reason y'all sit out a semester, you have to make that up, or else you have to appeal if it's an unusual circumstance. You do that to the South Carolina Commission on Higher Ed, and they'll determine whether or not they approve you for the Life Scholarship. Then we have the Hope Scholarship. This is only for your first year, and this has been from anyone that graduated from South Carolina High School that had at least a 3.0 but did not meet one of the other 2 requirements. And that is the hope that you'll fall into life by earning at least 30 hours in a 3.0 after that first year. Life Scholarship, $5,000 a year for 4 years. Palmetto Fellows, $6,700 the first year, jumps up to $7,500 your sophomore, junior, and senior year. Hope Scholarship, $2,800 that first year. Now, if for some reason, to be eligible for this, South Carolina resident, permanent resident, be enrolled as a first-time degree-seeking student. If any of you transferred in and you took developmental courses at the school you were at previously, make sure you bring that to our attention, because there may be a way we can extend your clock based on the number of hours you're enrolled in, where it may not start that very first semester, but it may start a semester afterwards if you took developmental courses. You must certify that you've not been convicted of any felonies or had any alcohol or drug misdemeanors within the past year. And if you owe on any federal or state refunds or financial aid repayment for any aid, that'll also prevent you from being eligible for it. So Palmetto Fellows, those are the requirements. That was done. It had to have been done through your high school and the South Carolina Department of Education, South Carolina Commission on Higher Ed. They determine it and they give us your information. If for some reason you do not meet your requirements, but you have an unusual circumstance as to the reason why, you need to make sure that you appeal if for some reason you don't get this through the South Carolina Commission on Higher Ed, because they're the ones that would approve it. The downside with it for Palmetto Fellows or for life, if you appeal, they probably won't let us know till around October. So what that means is, even if you get approved, you would be responsible for paying for those funds up front until we get that approval. So that's the downside. But if you have an unusual circumstance, make sure you write a detailed letter, provide documentation, and if you don't go to summer school, make sure in your appeal process that you explain to them why you didn't attend summer school, because apparently that has a high has a high factor in determining whether or not you get approved for that appeal. And remember, 30 hours each year. You cannot include AP or classes you took prior, and it's 30 hours each academic year. They don't roll over. Life Scholarship, remember, this is the one that you can get each year if you transfer in. Remember, all of the courses you took, regardless, even though we will not transfer in the grades for the Life Scholarship, it's going to count those grades that you took, even if you took them prior to coming here. Will not happen for Palmetto Fellows, but for Life Scholarship, it's counted in the Life GPA to determine your eligibility. So if for some reason you're short with hours, if you take any course over the summer, even if it doesn't transfer in, and you get a grade for it, it can help your Life GPA. So in some cases, that's where it would benefit you that you could take a course at home. It could be a relatively easy course, not a repeat course, but a relatively easy course, and if you get a good grade in it, it'll help improve the hours earned and your GPA for the Life GPA. 30, 60, 90. Hope Scholarship, remember that's just the first year. Hope that you'll be eligible for life. Then we have the enhancements. So if you're receiving the state scholarship, Palmetto Fellows or Life, and you're planning on majoring in the natural sciences or math, we don't have it here, but also engineering, then you can qualify for an enhancement, which is $2,500 on top of the scholarship. So the Life is $5,000. If you get the enhancement, that's going to be $7,500. You get $2,500 on top of it. Now, to qualify for this enhancement, you've got to do 14 hours in your first year. So if either one of y'all plan on majoring in any of the math or the natural sciences that are approved for the enhancement, by the end of this year that we're in now, your first year, you have to earn at least 14 hours of math, 14 hours of science, or a combination of both. Yes, sir?
Actually, I'm sophomore.
Okay. So if you were, we would have gone to your first year to determine it. It's always based on that. So remember, some people may not qualify for the Life Scholarship till their sophomore, even their junior year. I still have to go to that first year to determine if they did the 14 hours of math and science to determine if they can get the enhancement later on. Yes, ma'am?
Does the AP credit from high school count?
AP credit does count. It counts toward the 14 hours. It will not count toward the hours needed for renewal for Palmetto Fellows, but it will count toward life hours, and it counts toward your enhancement hours. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. And then our institutional scholarships. Now, remember, for the state scholarships and the presidential for entering freshmen, that was based on your high school. Your institutional scholarships are going to be based usually on what you do while you're here. So that's where you need to look at what your major is. Because remember, a lot of these scholarships aren't gonna be awarded probably till your junior or senior year, because sometimes you have to declare your major in order for them to determine whether or not they're gonna award you, you know, because if you're gonna major in math, the School of Arts may not wanna give you an art scholarship if you're gonna be majoring in math. So what you need to do is, one, look at what you're good at. I had someone who was really good in physics. So if they wanted to go to MUSC to be a physician, most people wouldn't say you would major in physics. But if you're really good in physics and you can get that scholarship that's in that physics department, you can still major in physics and go to MUSC. You just need to make sure you still take the classes that are required to be admitted as a person pursuing that particular degree. So in some cases, if you have a unique talent or skill, for example, my son, he dances as well as doing engineering. So when he goes, he's applying for a scholarship in their fine arts department as well, because it'll stack on top of them. Of course, you gotta make sure that your time management is there, but look at any skill that you possess, and then find out what on campus, what resources are available to you. Some people may sing, they may be a choir, you could get into the choir course or something like that, and a lot of times those will also benefit you, because the problem is we have a lot of kids that have 4.0s. So when I award a scholarship, I may have 50 people that have 4.0 grade point average. I gotta go somewhere else. I gotta dig a little deeper. You gotta peel the layers of that onion to see exactly what's there. And that's where you get into leadership points, where you run and you become secretary of a particular organization, the treasurer, vice president, president, become involved in certain activities on campus, Office of Service Learning, where you get some community service hours in, federal work study or tutoring. All of those things add to improve your resume, because what you're doing is, we're going to compare apples to apples. So if everybody has the same GPA, what is going to set this student apart from another student? And that's where getting involved in certain extracurricular activities, doing certain community service projects, being involved within your department and other areas on campus so that you're visual, that people see you and they remember you. A lot of those going to go a long way as far as your institutional scholarships. But the key to that is to make sure that you do well while you're here, because you're going to be based on your peers. So that's where GPA alone won't always be the one factor they're going to look at to determine your eligibility for the scholarships. So for those of you that don't have the state scholarship or the presidential, if you're a good student while you're here, that's where you need to start looking at departmental scholarships. Start looking at them now if you're a freshman or sophomore, and then determine whether you can apply for them now, because some of them are available to sophomores. You may just have to declare your major. The reason why I say that is I also have grants. The FAFSA, we have a teach grant. It's not even need-based, but if you're going to be teaching in a high-need field and you meet the other requirements for it, either the scoring in the upper 75th percentile on a particular test, SAT, ACT, GRE, even your graduates, so if you plan on going to graduate schools, there's some grants. Remember, what's the good thing about grants?
You don't pay them back.
You don't have to pay them back. Loans, you have to pay them back. Scholarships, for the most part, you do not have to pay back. But that's the important thing with the grants. And this grant, the Teach grant, if you're going into teaching, you don't have to worry about how much money you or your parents earn, because it's a grant that, as long as you teach for at least 4 years within 8 years of graduation, it's forgiven, and you don't have to worry about paying back on it. And there are certain loans as well, if you're going into certain fields, that will be forgiven. If you teach in high-need fields or in a high-need school, there's a teacher loan. There's also the federal loan. You can get up to $17,500 forgiven on federal loans if you're teaching math, science, or special ed, or $5,000 forgiven on the loans if you're going into other fields that aren't considered high need. So there are many different things out there that you need to look at to determine exactly what will benefit you once you get out. And of course, your grants, if it's based on need, you have to complete the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. FAFSA.gov. Do not go to FAFSA.com. FAFSA.com will fool a lot of people because they'll fill your application out early and give you an estimate of what you're eligible for. But the only way schools get their information is through FAFSA.gov. So you're basically paying them just to be a provider. So you'll pay them anywhere from $75 to $300 for them to process your FAFSA, and all they're going to do is take that information and put it in the FAFSA.gov and send it. You can do it yourself. So definitely check with us and be very careful about paying anyone anything in order to do it. Of Please complete your FAFSA by March 1, because what will happen is certain forms of financial aid is limited. So if you complete the FAFSA, unless the government goes under, if you're eligible for the Pell Grant, you'll get the Pell Grant. If you're eligible for loans, they'll let you get the loans. Parent loans, downside to that is they have to apply for it. And a lot of times when they apply, if they don't get it, that can be the deciding factor on whether or not you come or not. But the other parts of the federal aid, institutional need-based grant is $2,000 a year. South Carolina need-based grant, $2,500 a year. Perkins loan, $2,000 loan. No interest accruing while you're in school. 5% interest when you go into repayment. Has a lot of forgivable clauses in there if you teach or work in certain fields where they'll forgive it. Peace Corps, a lot of other things that you could do that'll help you cover that cost, to where if you teach in a high need or high need or low income area, then what'll happen is, one is where you're serving students that have that qualify for free or reduced lunches. So if you work in those schools and you're in a high need field and a high need school, a lot of times they'll forgive your loans as well. But the FAFSA, we want to get that done by March 1, because those grant programs is unlimited. So South Carolina need-based grant, South Carolina gives us so much money in need-based grant. When I award it, I award it. I don't hold on to it for the most part. But the key is, if you meet that priority date and you're eligible for it, when we go to award you, it'll award it. The other thing is federal work study. It's like that as well. It's limited. So when you complete that FAFSA, if you're interested in federal work study, make sure you check that box off and make sure you get it done by March 1. Yes, sir.
I had a question about work and work study. I don't know if it's changed, but I remember from when I first got the Palmetto Fellows, it had a limit on hours you can work. Said something like you can only work 10 hours a week. No? That's what.
Palmetto Fellows doesn't have any work requirements on there. Now, we offer federal work study, which is an award that you get through the FAFSA, and we ask that you try to average no more than 20 hours each pay period, or 20 hours a week. We want you to work between 5 and 20 hours a week.
Did I just misread that 3 years ago, or is that?
Yeah, because the Palmetto Fellows is a scholarship, and it does not have any work restrictions on you as far as that's concerned. I can look it up afterwards if you want.
Okay. Just to let you know, we will have another work study position open for next fall. One of them, we have two. Actually, we have two this semester. Actually, 3 now, because one's doing an internship with us. But Jasmine's graduating this May, so when she graduates, we'll open that up again. But if you're looking for a work study position for the fall, we will be taking resumes and interest very soon. So.
And in order to get it through federal work study, that's where you got to, complete your FAFSA prior to March 1. Now remember, if y'all are returning students, we won't be awarding y'all till probably June of next year. We wait for them to set the new tuition and fee rates. And that doesn't usually happen until after the board meets in the beginning of June. So we award you up to your cost of attendance. So that tuition and fee has a big key into that. If you were entering freshman, we awarded you a little earlier, because we already knew that you were going to be entering freshman, and we already had all the other information we needed. As a returning student, when we award you aid for your scholarships, we got to have your final grades, right? To determine if you met the 3.0 GPA and whether or not you met the hour requirements. So that's one reason why we don't do it prior to you getting your grades. And then we have to take the scholarships into consideration to determine how much federal aid you get. So that's why it doesn't happen until June. So a lot of you can go on and complete the FAFSA. You're going to tell your parents, listen, I need to get that FAFSA done prior to March 1. A lot of them are going to say, well, no, I don't have my tax information. We can't do that now. You can do it and put will file, and they can estimate it. Then after you get your taxes done, because that deadline is usually April 15th, you'll still have time to go back out and make a correction. Because the key is, when I go to award need-based aid, the system's going to say, well, did they file that initial FAFSA prior to what date?
March 1st.
March
1. So you see, even if you do it, make corrections afterwards, you can still get the corrections done, and we can verify everything prior to us awarding in June. And you'll have that priority date in there, which is key to you being able to get some of that need-based aid if you're gonna be a high-need student. Because for some of you, that's the key in order to make sure that you can make it through that next step, is having some of those other grants and stacking them on top of each other, as well as work study. Key is priority date and then meet the other requirements for those particular grants. Now we have the specialty institutional scholarship. That's where I was talking about. If you have music skill, dancing, they have the pep band, they have the dancers. They have a lot of different areas that you can, if it can fit within your schedule, because remember the key is stacking on top of it. So if you have another specialty other than just your major, look at those areas to see if they have anything. And this is the one thing that we discovered that most students really don't do, and that's your local private scholarships. See, a lot of students come to school with scholarships as entering freshmen, but those are usually non-renewable scholarships. They're good for that first year. And you know what most of you do? Nothing. You get the scholarship that first year and that's it. Then you start looking at everything at the school. Well, a lot of those same scholarships, guess what you have to do? Reapply. You can get some of those same scholarships over and over. You reapply. Some of them say specifically for a high school graduate, but some of them don't. Because of me as a businessman, if I'm offering scholarships in my area, that's a way that I advertise. And I get people to come in and, follow up with my business. A lot of times, that's all it's there for, is to help in the community, to make you aware. So a lot of times, you need to still look for scholarships, even though you're not a freshman anymore, or entering freshmen, still look for scholarships in your local area to determine whether or not you can reapply for scholarships you had, or if new scholarships come out. So sometimes your high schools, you'll still be able to go to their website and find out any local scholarships. And even if it's not the high school, check the library, check your parents' employer, check your employer. My employer gave a scholarship and I never knew about it until I was graduating from college from a coworker. The manager didn't even know about it. But then some of the big areas, Walmart, Coca-Cola, these scholarships are available for you even if you're not an employee or your parents aren't associated with them. You just have to fill the application out. What I recommend you do is anytime you write a letter, make sure, one, that it is proofed. You take it, you have someone proofread it, make sure your grammar and everything is correct. It should be saved on a thumb drive or a disk. Because what you could do is you can apply for multiple scholarships using that same letter. A lot of times all you have to do is find and replace. It can be the exact same letter, it's just a matter of changing the subject from fall to spring, from basketball to football, to nursing, just something as simple as that. And I can't stress find and replace, because I have had some letters saying, thank you, Clemson. Hello? I'm not Clemson. So even though they just didn't change it, and they would have been a candidate, something as simple as that can make the difference sometimes in you losing out on thousands of dollars because you're not paying attention to detail. So, and these are some of the civic organizations around here, as well as the local scholarships that you need to look at. Specifically, if you're not from the Tri-County area, look in your area to find out if there are different scholarships that are specific to your county, where you live at. So, you want to check with your high school guidance counselor. Some of you may still have some good connections. Of course, your parents, employees, college website. Some of these specialized scholarship search engines, what you do is you put your information in there and then they just spit out scholarships that say, hey, based on what you put in this, you're eligible for it. Now, it may be to a specific region, it may be to a specific college, it may be to a specific major, but what it's saying is based on what you put in, it looks like you may be eligible. You still have to continue to do the work afterwards, but this is especially beneficial if you have something unique. So yes, we have scholarships for students that have asthma. I have scholarships for people that are chemotherapy survivors, that are transplant survivors. So in certain cases, if you have something unique that you survived or been through, look for that. But just remember, the key is follow up any organization you're not positive with and make sure that they have a good rating with the Better Business Bureau. Check with Consumer Affairs on them if they're not, if it's something you don't know about. And most definitely don't pay someone in order to determine if you qualify for funds to go to school.
That's a
the
quick
fee
question.
purpose.
I'm familiar with FAFSA, of course we use a lot in the scholarships.com, I've seen that one, but what's the brokescholar.com? I'm not familiar with that
It's
one.
just another database, and what happens, they have a number of different databases out there. Some of them we follow and some of them we don't because they are funded usually by a private or alternative loan lender,
Okay.
and with certain practices. It's just a database that when you put your information in,
Similar to FAFSA.
yeah, because some of these, if you were to go to all three of them, some of them are going to kick the exact same scholarships out to you. But some of them may be unique, just like that businessman, you know. I'm going to make sure that the school that I work at probably and that my children attend know about this scholarship, but it may not go to all guidance counselors in the area. So that's where, in certain cases, certain people may have brokered with them, and they'll put all their information out with them in their database, and they may not show up in the middle.
Cool, thank you.
It can be overwhelming as well now, because it may give you a scholarship to the University of Alaska, and you say, I'm not going to Alaska. But it's a way that they recruit students and get that information out there. And of course, the net price calculator, this is usually for entering freshmen, or if you're looking at transferring or doing anything like that. All schools are required to use what's called the net price calculator. Now, different ones are more robust than others. Some of them are specific to entering freshmen. But what would happen is if you put your information in there, it will tell you what type of financial aid you can expect to receive. And this is required for all schools that participate in Title IV. And then there's FAFSA.gov. .gov, not FAFSA.com. This is what you have to do to determine your eligibility for any form of federal financial aid: Pell Grant, SEOG grant, Perkins loan, direct loans, parent sub-loans, Teach grant. We also use that to determine your eligibility for institutional need-based grant, South Carolina need-based grant, federal work study. And it's also used in certain cases in combination with your federal aid for your private alternative loans and your scholarships along with this determined need. It must be done each year. It's always available January 1. So the one for the upcoming year became available January 1 of this year. It has not changed dramatically from the way it used to be. Now, when you fill out this FAFSA, it's going to ask you a couple of questions. One is, will you be 24 by the end of this year? Are you married? Do you have children that you provide over 50% of the support for? Do you have other dependents that you provide over 50% of the support for that live with you and will continue living with you through June 30th of 2016? Are you a veteran? Are you an orphan warded to court? Are you in a legal guardianship situation? Are you an emancipated minor, or were you an emancipated minor prior to reaching the age of majority in your state, which is 18 for us? Are you a graduate or professional student? And are you considered homeless by a high school liaison, federal, or state supporting agency? If you answer no to all those questions, then they're saying you are a dependent student for federal financial aid purposes, whether someone claims you as a dependent or not. So if you answer no to all those questions and you're a dependent, then they say you must provide parent income information. If your parents are separated or divorced, to determine which parent's income information you use the parent that you resided with the most during the previous 12 months. So if I'm filling the staffs out today, I go back 12 months. Which parent did I live with more than the other? That's whose parent's income information I need to put on the FAFSA. And if that parent is remarried, I must also put that step-parent information out there, regardless whether they help with my educational expenses or not. And prenups have absolutely no bearing on the FAFSA. I've gotten them before. So it doesn't matter. The feds are saying that that's what happens. If for some reason you didn't live with one parent more than the other parent, then you go back 12 months, and whichever parent provided the most financial support is the parent that you're supposed to use. And if that parent is remarried, that step-parent's information goes on there also. And as I said, if your parents are living together, even if they're not married now, that's one thing that has changed. You're required to provide both parents' income information. And if your parents are same-sex and they were married in a state that recognizes that same-sex marriage, even though they may be in the state that does not, in that case you would answer the question domestic partners, and you would answer the question to both of them, which is something else that's new that they've added on the FAFSA. This is the second year. Now, the downside with the FAFSA, if you get selected for verification, and this is what usually holds a lot of students up. What happens is the funds that we use to give you financial aid are tax dollars. They come from you paying taxes and your parents paying taxes when you file your federal and state income tax. So if you get selected for verification, we are required to verify the information that was put on the FAFSA. We used to be able to just turn in to copy your signed tax returns and that would be it. But after a little investigation, they discovered that some of the tax forms that we had in our office didn't match the tax forms that were at the IRS. So now they make the parents and students submit the tax information to us straight from the IRS. So if you're completing the FAFSA, and your parents have already filed their taxes, I think effective February the 28th, if their taxes are filed, you can use what's called the IRS data retrieval. And the IRS data retrieval is when they're completing that FAFSA, they indicate they want to do it. It takes them from the FAFSA website to the IRS website. If they can answer the questions and the address matches what's on file, then their tax information will populate and they have an opportunity to transfer it straight to the FAFSA. And if that happens and you're selected for verification, you don't have to provide tax returns to me anymore because the information on the FAFSA came straight from the IRS. And that usually saves a whole lot of parents the heartache of having to wait to get that tax return after the fact. Now, the IRS data retrieval is not available until 2 to 3 weeks after your parents file their taxes electronically, or 6 to 8 weeks if they mail in a paper FAFSA. So just remember how that can impact you, because as a returning student, we won't award you if you get selected for verification until we complete verification. And remember, if I turn it on and you hadn't completed verification, you may be eligible for South Carolina Need-Based Grant, Institutional Need-Based Grant, SELG Grant, Federal Work Study. But because you hadn't completed verification, I don't award you. Then we award again. You're not finished, so I don't award you. Then finally you get everything in, I go to award, and what's happened? The money's gone. So that's where that verification can really hold you up in certain cases if you get selected. So that's where, when you complete the FAFSA, it's going to send you an email notification if you do it electronically. I definitely recommend you do it electronically. If so, it's just going to tell you it's been processed. But it may have been processed with errors. The only way you can tell that is to log back into your FAFSA and see what it says. It may say you've been selected for verification. It may say that you didn't indicate that you were registered with Selective Service. You could have been a female and not answered that question correctly, and it's saying you need to register with Selective Service when you ended up saying that you were a male as opposed to a female. So if you're a male, you're required. It could be all kinds of little things. And remember, missing one awarding cycle can mean thousands of dollars in some cases. So try to make sure that you check that FAFSA, because we won't be awarding you till later on. You can complete that FAFSA today, and they could tell you that something's wrong. And you can go in and make that correction, and then we may not start loading that FAFSA until March. Well, your FAFSA could already be processed and completed now, but now you're going to wait till March for us to tell you that something needs to be done. So when you complete that FAFSA and they send you that email, log into it and read the comments to see what it says to determine if there's something else that needs to be done with that. And then the other thing is SAP, Standards of Academic Progress. If you're receiving financial aid, you're required to complete a certain percentage of your classes. So if you withdraw from classes or fail them, you don't earn the hours. And what I mean is, let's say that you take 4 classes, 4 3-hour classes, that's 12 hours. You make an A, a B, a W, and an F. You've earned 6 hours to 2A. You earned credit for those classes. The W is a withdrawal. You withdrew from it. You don't earn that. That F is a failure. You don't earn it. It has a punitive result on your grades. But because you attempted 12 and you only earned 6, what would your completion percentage be? 50%. For financial aid, you have to maintain at least a 65% completion rate until you've earned 20 hours. And once you've earned 20 or more hours, you have to have at least a 67% completion rate. So the reason why I tell you is a lot of times some people say, oh, the solution is just to withdraw. In some cases, understand that that withdrawal can have a negative effect on your federal financial aid, because they make us monitor it 2 ways, qualitative and quantitative. Quantity, how long? That's your completion percentage. Qualitative, the quality is your grade point average. So you have to have a certain GPA and you have to have a certain completion percentage in order to continue to be eligible for financial aid. And then last but not least, when you complete that FAFSA, for parents that are completing the FAFSA for the upcoming year, it's based on last year's income, 2014 income. A whole lot could have changed. For example, parents could have gotten a $50,000 lottery winnings. That shows up on your tax return as income. It's just a one-time lump sum. That's not what they're going to be earning throughout this year. So if for some reason, when your parents look at their 2014 tax return and they realize that their 2015 is, if there's a huge difference in that because of some unusual circumstance, loss of a job, changing a job, loss of a spouse, divorce or separation after the FAFSA is already filled out. If your parents had high medical bills that they paid during the year, that were paid, not the bills themselves, but that were paid out of pocket, all of those are things that we can take into consideration and in some cases reduce the income, which in certain cases may make you eligible for more forms of financial aid. So you would complete it using the actual income information from the year they're requesting, then contact the financial aid office to determine whether or not you qualify for unusual circumstance. You provide that documentation, we make the adjustments, and in certain cases that adjustment may make you eligible for certain grants you weren't eligible for, or in some cases make you eligible for a better loan where the government's going to be paying the interest on that loan if you really need those loan funds, as opposed to having an unsubsidized loan where the interest is accruing while you're in school. I know that was a lot of information. Questions?
You guys have questions? Go ahead.
Federal grant is only for full-time students?
No. For the federal grant, Pell Grant, you can actually get that in some cases if you're less than even half-time. For loans, student loans, parent loans, the federal loans, you have to be at least half-time. That's 6 hours as an undergraduate student or 3 hours as a graduate student. Most grants are going to require you to be enrolled at least half-time as well. However, the Pell Grant, according to where you fall at on that scale, it's a sliding scale. You can get funds for being in less than half-time, which is less than 6 hours.
Question.
Yes, ma'am?
If you're filling out your FAFSA and you get selected for verification afterwards, is there any reason why you wouldn't be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool?
There are some factors. For example, the IRS data retrieval tool can only bring across one tax return, and that would be the first tax return. So let's say that you filed taxes and then you had to do an amendment, which means there was a mistake on it and you had to amend it, change it. It won't do it. Let's say that your parents are married filing separate returns. It can only pull in one tax return. So if they're married filing separate tax returns, it would say they're ineligible to use the data retrieval. They must go through the IRS and get a tax return transcript for both parents. If your marital status changed from the past year to the new year, it'll tell you you're not eligible for the data retrieval too. And that would be, for example, a mother that got married in February, filling the FAFSA out in March. So last year she filed her taxes, had a household, but when she filled out the FAFSA, she was married. So if she would use the data retrieval, it would only pull across hers, but because she was married at the time that she completed the FAFSA, they're going to want mom and stepfather's information, so they'll both have to get a tax return transcript. So there are a number of factors where you can't use it. And the other issue would happen is if you changed address, because a lot of times it's going to ask you to enter the data that was used when you file your taxes. If it's not the exact same format that the IRS has, it won't allow you to use the data retrieval.
So you could, would it have to be moving sometime in like January or March, sometime between when you filed your taxes and when you're doing FAFSA?
Well, the issue there is whether the information, because even if you move, you can put the correct information in there and it will work. The problem has been, for example, someone may be trying to fill this out in May. And what happened was they changed their address. And when they keep going online, they keep putting their new address. Well, that's not the address the IRS has on file. Remember, this is data retrieval, so it's just taking the information from the IRS and putting it on the FAFSA. A tax return transcript is a copy of your taxes. So if you changed your address, it won't allow you to change the address because that has your social security number on it, all kind of information. So it's according to what type of information. If you're using the data retrieval, the key is when you're filling that information out online, it has to match what's with the IRS. if you're getting a tax return transcript, understand that they're gonna mail it to you. The only way they're gonna mail it is to the address that's on file. So if you changed your address and you tell them to send it to you, they're gonna send it to that address on file. So if someone else is there and it goes there, they'll end up having your personal information, your social security number, your kid's social security number in certain cases. So that's where you just gotta make sure. They also have a new way now where you can go to the IRS website and say that you wanna get your transcript online. Now they'll ask you a bunch of questions. I consider them silly questions because I went out to try to do it and it asked me which one of these was my old phone number. Well, I hadn't been in Oklahoma in 9 years. And they asked me about one of my phone numbers that I had when I was in Oklahoma like 10 years ago. So I couldn't answer that question, so as a result of not being able to do that, I couldn't get it online. But my address matched, and I said I'd do that, so they mailed it to me and I got it in about 6 days. So it varies. It's just whether or not you can answer the challenge questions that they have out there for you. The key is if you can use the data retrieval, go in and use the data retrieval because that way you don't have to worry about sending the school the tax return. It would just be a little 2-page form. It's called a verification worksheet. Yes,
So
sir.
that you have to do after February 20, you saying?
The data retrieval tool probably won't be available until after that. I'll find out the exact date. I just saw the webinar the other day. I just can't remember it right now. But what will happen is the data retrieval is not available until after your tax return has been processed. So even if you wait till March, if you apply on March the 1st, you can't use it on March the 5th. You usually have to wait 2 to 3 weeks after you file the taxes before it'll be available.
So do you access the data retrieval through FAFSA or?
Only if the parent's tax return has already been processed. So if your parents were going out now and doing it, they shouldn't be able to get the data.
So wait
They hadn't
until
even
the
started
payment.
processing tax returns. They won't do that till the end of this month. But what they could do is they could do estimated. Then let's say later on, they get a refund check back. Hey, they processed my tax return. Now you can log into the FAFSA and then say, I want to use the data retrieval tool. You do everything correctly, it will then update the FAFSA with the data that came from the IRS, and it'll put a code out there letting the school know, hey, parent did the data retrieval tool, data was transferred and not changed, which means I don't have to request a tax return transcript from you now.
So you have to use the tool, you can't just go back and fill in correctly?
No, you can fill it in. I'm just saying if you fill it in and you get selected for verification, you're going to have to either use the data retrieval tool or request an IRS tax return transcript and then turn that into the school.
Questions? Don't forget that we are requiring all Roar scholars, all Roar scholars to, per one of, I think it's number 4 on the Roar Grenade application, you have to show that you have completed the FAFSA and print out that sheet, the last page that says now you've completed your FAFSA. So that's one of the requirements for Grenade for the spring semester, because we had a problem last year with a few students that either submitted the FAFSA late or for whatever reason forgot to fill it out. So that way it's kind of a checks and balances to kind of keep you guys on point. If you do have problems with filling out your FAFSA, obviously Kirsty and I are available here and financial aid is available to assist you guys in completing that. So.
For completing it, I would recommend you go to College Gold Sunday that they have available at the different tech schools, where you go in and they'll have someone that'll sit down. You just have to have the information available. But College Gold Sunday, I get you that weekend as well for it. And we will help, but we will not fill it out, because if we fill it out, we have to sign it as a preparer.
Right.
So we will assist you with certain questions, but we do not fill it out. Now, there are certain services that are available for you that will actually help you fill it out.
Is there any more questions you guys have about anything about that, specifically about anything that DJ talked about?
Or any other financial aid questions?
What if you adult and you want to college? So
You have to look for any adult scholarships. Now, they do offer some of those through Dorinda's office in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions.
okay.
They do have some adult scholarships. The key there is to make sure that you check the deadlines out and look at the requirements for the scholarships and that you meet those requirements.
Cool. All right. Thank you much.
Thank you.